Beneath the Pines by Everett Cole. The wind carried a salty tang as it swept across the rocky shores of coastal Maine, rustling through the towering pines that lined the cliffs. Late afternoon sunlight streamed through the trees, casting long shadows over the forest floor. Eliza Bennett stood on the porch of her family's cabin, gazing out over the Atlantic Ocean. The sound of the waves crashing against the rocks below was a constant, soothing presence, one she had missed more than she realized. The weathered cabin had always been her sanctuary, a place where childhood summers stretched endlessly into golden memories. Now, after 15 years of grinding away in Boston's publishing world, she found herself back here, inheriting not just the property but all the dreams and possibilities it held. Her grandmother's passing 3 months ago had left an ache in her heart, but also this gift, a chance to start over. Eliza pulled her cardigan tighter around her shoulders as a cool breeze swept in from the ocean. The spring air still carried winter's chill, but there was a promise of warmth in the strengthening sun. Her life in Boston felt distant now. The endless manuscripts, the fluorescent lit office, the pressure to climb the corporate ladder. She had resigned from her position as senior editor last week, a decision that still felt surreal. The sound of tires crunching on gravel drew her attention. A blue pickup truck, weather-beaten but well-maintained, pulled into the driveway. The logo on its side read Langston Boats in crisp white lettering. Eliza's heart skipped a beat as a familiar figure stepped out. Jack? The name escaped her lips before she could stop it. Jack Langston looked up, surprise flickering across his features before a warm smile spread across his face. He was older now, they both were, but time had been kind to him. His dark hair was touched with silver at the temples, and fine lines creased the corners of his eyes, but he still carried himself with that easy grace she remembered. His green eyes, bright as sea glass, held the same warmth they always had. "Eliza Bennett," he said, removing his cap. "I heard someone was fixing up Margaret's place, but I didn't expect." He trailed off, studying her face. "It's good to see you." "You too," she managed, trying to ignore the way her pulse quickened. "I didn't know you were still in town." Jack climbed the porch steps, his boots making solid thuds against the worn wood. "Never left. Took over Dad's business when he retired. We've expanded a bit, custom boats, repairs, some restoration work." He gestured to the truck. "I was actually heading to check on Mrs. Peterson's sailboat when I saw the lights on here." Eliza smiled, remembering the elderly woman who lived down the coast. "She still has that old Pearson. The very same. Though she lets her grandkids take it out more these days." Jack leaned against the porch railing, his presence both familiar and new. "How long are you staying?" "I'm not sure," Eliza admitted. "I left my job in Boston. Grandmother left me the cabin and I thought—" She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I thought maybe it was time for a change." Jack's expression softened. "I was sorry to hear about Margaret. She was something special." "She was," Eliza agreed, feeling the familiar tightness in her throat. "She always said this place had healing powers. Something about the salt air and pine needles." She wasn't wrong. Jack glanced at the cabin's exterior. "Place needs some work, though. That storm last winter did a number on the coast." Eliza followed his gaze, noting the loose shingles and weathered siding. "I wouldn't even know where to start." "I could help," Jack offered, then quickly added, "if you want. I've picked up a few things over the years, maintaining the boatyard." Their eyes met, and Eliza felt a flutter of something she thought she'd left behind years ago. "I'd like that." Over the next few weeks they fell into an easy rhythm. Jack would stop by after work, and together they'd tackle the cabin's needed repairs. He taught her how to replace shingles, fix loose boards, and seal windows against the coastal winds. Their conversations flowed naturally, filling in the gaps of their years apart. She learned about his journey with the boat business, how he'd modernized his father's workshop while maintaining its reputation for quality craftsmanship. He listened as she shared stories about her publishing career, her dreams of writing, and her growing certainty that she'd needed this change. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Jack asked the question she'd been avoiding. "Why did you never come back? After college, I mean." Eliza wrapped her hands around her mug of tea, considering her answer. "I thought I needed to prove something. To myself, maybe, that I could make it in the city, be successful." She smiled ruefully. "Turns out success looks different than I imagined." Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. "We were young, had different dreams." "Were they really so different?" She turned to face him. "You wanted to build beautiful things. I wanted to help create beautiful stories. And now." Eliza paused, watching a seabird wheel overhead. Now I think maybe I was looking for something that was here all along." Jack's hand found hers on the railing, his touch gentle but sure. "I thought about you. I wondered if you were happy out there." "I was, sometimes," she admitted. "But something was always missing. I'd find myself thinking about this place, about the summers we spent here." She met his gaze. "About you." The moments stretched between them, filled with unspoken words and possibilities. Jack's thumb traced small circles on her palm, sending tingles up her arm. "We could make new memories," he said softly. The next day, Jack arrived with an old wooden rowboat in tow. "Thought you might want to see the coast from a different perspective," he said, eyes twinkling. "Like old times." They launched the boat from a small cove, Jack's strong arms rowing them past the rocky shoreline. Eliza trailed her fingers in the cool water, watching the way sunlight danced on the surface. They talked about everything and nothing, local gossip, his latest boat restoration, her ideas for the novel she was finally starting to write. When they reached a quiet inlet, Jack shipped the oars. The boat rocked gently with the waves as they shared the lunch Eliza had packed: fresh bread, local cheese, and wild blueberries. It felt like stepping back in time, yet everything was different now. They were different. "Remember when we used to sneak out here to watch the meteor showers?" Jack asked, his voice soft with memory. Eliza smiled. "Your dad caught us that one time. I thought we were in so much trouble. He just laughed and told us to be careful." Jack's eyes squinted at the corners. "Said young love was worth a little rebellion." The word love hung in the air between them. Eliza's heart thundered in her chest as Jack moved closer, his hand finding hers again. This time, when their eyes met, neither looked away. "Eliza," he whispered, reaching up to brush a strand of hair from her face. "I never stopped caring about you." She leaned into his touch, years of buried feelings rising to the surface. "I never stopped caring about you either." When their lips met, it felt like coming home. The kiss was gentle, sweet with the taste of blueberries and salt air. Jack's hand cradled her face as though she were precious, breakable. When they parted, his smile was brighter than the sun on the water. As spring turned to summer, the cabin transformed under their care. Fresh paint brightened the exterior, new flowers bloomed in the garden beds, and the interior slowly filled with the comfortable touches of home. But the real transformation was happening between them. They took evening walks along the shore, sharing stories and dreams. Jack showed her his workshop, where half-finished boats took shape under his skilled hands. Eliza read him chapters from her growing novel, encouraged by his genuine interest and thoughtful feedback. One evening, as they sat on their favorite spot on the porch, Jack turned to her with unusual seriousness. "I've been thinking," he said, taking her hand. "The Peterson place is up for sale. It's closer to town, but it still has a good view of the water." Eliza's breath caught as she understood what he was suggesting. "Jack, we could fix it up together," he continued, his voice soft but sure. "Make it ours. If you want to stay, that is." Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at him, this man who had always been part of her heart, even when she was too busy chasing other dreams to realize it. "Are you asking me to build a life with you, Jack Langston?" He smiled, bringing her hand to his lips. "I'm asking if you want to write our own story, right here where it all began." Eliza's answer was in her kiss, in the way she wrapped her arms around him and held on tight. The sun was setting behind them, painting the sky in shades of hope, and the constant sound of waves against the shore seemed to whisper of possibilities. Later that night, as they sat wrapped in a blanket watching stars appear above the pines, Eliza realized that sometimes the biggest dreams come true in the smallest towns, and that love, like the tide, has a way of bringing you back to where you belong. The wind still carried that salty tang, and the pines still whispered their ancient secrets, but now they told a different story, one of coming home, of second chances and of a love that had been waiting patiently all along.